A good evening and welcome to part 2 of why Rome Total War is better than you think. Today's focus is on the legacy and cultural impact of Rome, and for part 2 I'm here with Dr. Richard Cole, a scholar of ancient history who will accompany me on this exploration of Rome and its place in our great cultural stew. I also have MELKOR, Prince of Macedon and Volound making guest appearances to offer some of their thoughts on the subject. Today's video though is essentially a podcast in format to allow the focus to be on the discussion rather than too much distracting video footage. So with that in mind, let's introduce our main guest for today's video. Dr. Richard Cole is an interdisciplinary scholar of ancient history, with a particular interest in historical fiction, digital and virtual representations of antiquity, and classical reception. He is currently part of the multidisciplinary team on the AHRC-funded Virtual Reality Oracle project at the University of Bristol, where he holds the role of Research Associate in Ancient Greek History and Virtual Reality. Alongside this, he is working on a project entitled Virtual Antiquity, which includes an assessment of the way in which video games are shaping new forms of public history. As you can see, Richard Cole is definitely being influenced by video games and is something that he's still looking into in his scholarly life now. So let's get into this discussion then. Like myself, Richard, you studied ancient history at university, but unlike me, you have completed your doctorate and continue to pursue academia in the subject. So where exactly did Rome Total War fit in pushing you towards this more scholarly path?
So it's a good question. I think we were very lucky to sort of grow up during an era when these games were just coming out thick and fast. My journey into the ancient world definitely began with historical fictions from films and games and everything, but Rome was a big marker, I think, both in terms of video game development and my own interest in what could be done with the ancient world in this sort of still quite burgeoning media. I think there wasn't sort of anything like it focused on Rome. It definitely fitted in that trajectory towards wanting to sort of study the ancient world and understand it. And my sort of postgraduate work is definitely focused in on these kinds of areas of historical fictions and digital representations and what they sort of tend to call the reception side of the ancient world, because that really is what sparked my own interest and continues to spark my interest. And I'm really now focusing on how those representations have sparked other people's interest, because there is a lot of work to be done on how large an impact these things have had on different demographics of people over time.
Yeah, when I spoke to Prince of Macedon about the legacy of Rome, he actually made a comment quite similar to this. So I'll play that for you now. See what you make of it, Richard.
I am Alex Khan, known by my Prince of Macedon screen name online. For me, Rome Total War was the most important computer game ever made. But you have to dig back even further to the original Shogun Total War, when the potential for real-time tactical gaming was first realized. Of course, there have been many military simulations before Total War, but Shogun 1 was the first time I witnessed such a perfect combination of amazing tactical gameplay mixed in with terrific grand strategy. My favorite time period has always been Hellenistic times, focusing mainly on the time period of Alexander the Great and his successors. Rome Total War finally gave me an outlet to act like Alexander the Great against other history buffs around the world. When I started to make videos for Rome Total War, the highest praise I ever received was that I inspired others to do independent reading on history and learn more about these ancient military commanders that I've mentioned in my commentaries. Meeting other people like me was the most rewarding thing that I gained from playing Rome Total War. To this day, no other game on antiquity has matched the gameplay and strategic sense that Rome Total War was able to balance.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think the word there, outlet, was perfectly chosen, because there's a sense that this appetite was very much there, but it required the right sort of combination of abilities, opportunities, and modes of play that Rome Total War brought together. And the fact that it was also set in the ancient world, where all of this got brought together perfectly rather than a different period, I think is also really important. And it just sort of kick-started the genre even further. So you're looking back at this kind of really quite momentous example that has since been sort of built on and developed, but also has become a landmark moment for gamers themselves and for audiences interested in this period and in what you can do with computing when you play around with history, which is something very different from just a participatory kind of audience listening or reading perspective that you get from other media.
I think both yourself and Prince of Macedon have really hit the nail on the head there, because I know a lot of your work has been about how we perceive the ancient world, the reception of the ancient world in modern media, and I think that Rome Total War may have arrived at the perfect cultural moment. Films like Gladiator and Troy are on the scene, the HBO series Rome began, and Rome Total War's battle engine was used in BBC's Time Commander series. Rome certainly came out at a time where the classical world was riding a media wave of sorts. Indeed, this actually feeds into some of the comments that Volound made to me when we discussed the legacy of Rome. Seeing Rome Total War on television on shows like Time Commanders was just such a revelation. So I'll play that clip for you right now.
It was the first time I ever saw a strategy game on mainstream media. It was on TV. Rome Total War was on TV and Time Commanders, which was amazing because I had started out with Shogun 1 like 4 or 5 years earlier when I was a kid, really young. So for Rome Total War to come along, and I recognised that as being the successor to Shogun 1, way too late. Like you have to put these things together yourself when you're a kid. Like you don't immediately think, oh yeah, this is from the same people that made Shogun 1. But I realised it, and then it's like, wow, so this game that I played when I was a kid, Shogun 1, has made it all the way to TV in Britain with Time Commanders. Oh, that was really amazing. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, I know this game, I can play this game really well. I could do a better job of winning these battles than these people on TV if I was given the chance. It's quite a cool feeling. Never had it since, hadn't had it up until that point ever. So that just shows how influential Rome Total War was. It had a really good game engine, it simulated battles really well. 3D battles with hundreds of men making it onto TV and educating people on history. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I do remember Time Commanders well. It was actually quite entertaining. At least it was to me when I first watched it. And I think it was frustrating before the actual game came out. And I think Time Commanders came out before you could play Rome. And I remember going back and trying to make Age of Empires fit the kind of gameplay you could get with the game engine that Creative Assembly put together for Rome Total War. And you just couldn't. You couldn't have those kind of large scale battles plus the kind of map overview and the sort of encyclopedia alongside that. Age of Empires has got its own sort of structure that's a little bit more limited. So I think there was, the Time Commander series made it obvious what Rome could do, and I thought it was well done in that way. But I think there was also a media wave, nice sort of phrase there, that Total War came out of, and really you do have to look back to things like Gladiator because they revitalized interest in the ancient world at that kind of blockbuster level. I mean, the ancient world has always been there on screen, right from silent cinema all the way through. But it's kind of gone in and out. So you've got those sort of early films, and you've got the massive epics in the 50s, 60s, and everything, and then it goes away a bit, and then it comes back for a vengeance in sort of the early 2000s. And I think it just sort of nicely coincided with what was possible with video games at the time. The experiments of Civilization, for example, in the earlier 90s, through to Age of Empires, and then through to Total War. You've got a sort of developmental, quite a fast developmental phase there, from quite basic gameplay to something that's a lot more complex, both graphically and underneath that. So I think there's a nice sort of overlap there in interest and possibility. And I also think it's interesting how Rome brought together a lot of, so we touched on this already, that kind of opportunity aspect, but it brought together a lot of what was possible or interesting about the ancient world, but kind of partitioned out. So, in Gladiator, you've got spectacle, you've got grand battles, you've got political intrigue. In novels, before that, you had before the film, you had the same kind of richness in the way that the ancient world has been written about in historical fiction. You've got the sort of focus on imperial figures, or you've got the focus on sort of the every person, and then you've got plays that sort of delve even more deeper into different eras and look and sort of tease out what's interesting about them. So you've got this kind of tapestry of how the ancient world is being explored, but nothing brings it together and then allows the viewer, or in this case the user, to actually go into that world and sort of explore it in their own time, in their own way. And then suddenly gaming allows you to do that. And Rome Total War, more than any other game at that time, allowed you to sort of delve into the ancient world and explore it at will. And it wasn't just Rome, of course. That's what I loved so much, I think, about Rome Total War, is that it had this kind of holistic view. I mean, we're going to talk about accuracy later, but it definitely had a very rounded view of the ancient world that wasn't focused purely on Greece or Rome in the way that even the films have been. So you have this kind of richness to it that goes above and beyond other representations and allows for that kind of holistic representation and then the interest that can arise from that from individuals.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, though, the setting is historical, as you mentioned there, which is enough to entice plenty of people to the game. But personally for me, I've always loved reading things like the unit cards. This game was the first time I really remember reading a game's encyclopedia. I mean, nowadays we see this in all sorts of titles. The Civipedia in Civilization is vast. The small objects in games like Plague Tale of Innocence, or even the full guided tours of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's really gone to that full extreme now, but I think it's telling that both Volound and Prince of Macedon touched on how Rome not only inspired an interest in history, but helped educate people about antiquity. Rome's the first time I remember finishing playing a game to go and find out more historical context.
It's a really interesting moment, I think, because it brings together something that I've sort of looked at extensively, which is this idea of the historical note, which you find in historical fiction as early as Walter Scott's historical novels, which are sort of widely considered to be the first historical novels in at least in a modern context. And Walter Scott himself actually says, I think, in one of his early novels, he says, what I really want here is people to get inspired by the stories that I'm telling and go and find out more about the history. So this idea that we tell stories about the past in order to then go and do more research is a very sort of ingrained concept in historical fiction. But I think gaming takes it and really runs with it. So the examples you mentioned there are absolutely on point. That you go from these kinds of sort of, this is the sort of truth behind it, or this is the basis on which this story is set. But you can take that and then go all the way towards the Assassin's Creed Odyssey guided tours, which are absolutely brilliant, and sort of merge that gameplay experience with actually learning. So they become sort of pedagogic as well as entertainment games today. So that's fascinating. Rome did it very well because it was quite integrated. It wasn't so separate. So in historical novels or in films, you'll often get the sort of what they call paratext at the start that say, this is based on a true story, or at the end you'll get sort of clips or notes or text that show you, what maybe happened next, or what really happened, or the basis for the story, or these are the characters that actually have historical backgrounds, or whatever it might be. But often they're very separate. The story is this kind of self-contained entity, but with the game, with Rome Total War, you could sort of move in and out of that historical note format with Encyclopedia all the time, and you could sort of look up, okay, why is this unit named that? What's the basis behind this, or why are these buildings sort of contextualized in this manner? So I think that freedom to allow the person who's playing this game to move in and out of that was a real achievement, and has made a sort of big difference to the accessibility of information. The experience of games these days is fundamentally historical, because you move in and out of something that you're playing that is predominantly entertaining, perhaps also engaging and immersive, but also then takes you through that into a kind of more grounded, historical, the authenticated world. And so you're in moving constantly in and out of these spaces, you're learning and experiencing and engaging with the past all the time. And that's really quite unique, as I said, compared to other media.
Now, Richard, historical accuracy, you did just bring that up, and I do want to touch on that in a little bit more detail. Certainly, there are touches of, shall we say, creative license in Rome Total War, things like Bronze Age Egypt, for example, and of course some other things like the Marian reforms are simplified to fit into the media of gameplay. But how do you, as an academic, see those kind of details?
It's a really good question. Personally, I'm not actually so interested in accuracy here. Some academics might well be, and there's been a lot of scholarship on historical film, for example, where academics just sort of say, well, it's just film. It's not real. It's not accurate. And they sort of, it's very dismissive. The gesture is very dismissive. Now, when it comes to gaming, it's so understudied. There isn't even a dismissive gesture because so few people have written about these things in a kind of serious academic way. That's starting to change, absolutely. But the stances towards historical fiction have often been quite dismissive. So predominantly because accuracy is often the benchmark with which we balance and check these things. So if historical film is not accurate, then games, my God, they're definitely not going to be anything serious to merit attention. But actually, they are, and they're immensely important, and the reach and the impact of them fast exceeds any preceding media. So they're absolutely worth studying. But I don't think they're worth studying in terms of accuracy alone. So like I said, personally, I'm not so interested in that because I think there's a lot more you can do when you're studying these and interested in these games than thinking in terms of accuracy. And a good benchmark here is thinking about the scholarship that's been done on historical fiction, where the discussion has moved far beyond studying and looking at these things in terms of accuracy. Because if you do that, well, you're kind of basically ignoring most of why they exist, which is not to entirely accurately reconstruct the past, whether you can even do that. And historical fictions, on top of that, actually challenge whatever we understand of as accuracy. So especially when you come back to the ancient world, as far back as that, what is accuracy? What are we judging that on? Are we judging it on material evidence, which you have to infer a lot from? Are we judging it on literary evidence, which again, you have to extrapolate and understand the context of in order to work with it? Obviously, there's some things that you can get very wrong, and that could be a problem. But actually, accuracy, you can never get to that kind of fine level of granular detail and be like, this is absolutely accurate and based on verifiable evidence for everything. So absolute accuracy is impossible. And anyway, the game is not setting out to do that. It's very consciously not setting out to do that in the way it frames itself and the way it presents itself. So I think looking at it in terms of accuracy only takes you so far. And what's more interesting is to think about it, as scholars of historical fiction have done, as to what it's doing in terms of storytelling, how it's using the past, why it's reconstructing it in certain ways, what it puts in there, what it perhaps doesn't put in there. You can do a lot more when you start to think of it in that way. So I do think it's interesting that it strives to be quite close to aspects of the past in the way that it presents itself. But at the other times, it does take very free creative license. So the very setup of the Roman families is, it's not historically accurate, but it's definitely historically authentic in what it's trying to do. And again, that word authenticity is what people are starting to pick up more now when it comes to games, because historical games do try and be authentic a lot more than they try and be accurate. And so you can start looking at that idea of authenticity and how they set that up, so that people sort of get a sense that this is a path they can understand and believe in and learn something from, while not sort of losing out. While the game developers are not then having to go, right, okay, we've got to be so accurate here that we can't actually make this entertaining or fun or whatever. So authenticity is definitely an angle that I'm interested in, and I think is a very rich one. And I think that you can then pick up more, because if you start thinking about authenticity, you end up looking at what's been created rather than doing comparisons purely and wholly with some kind of evidence base you have. So rather than going, here's the game, is it accurate? What is this evidence base I have? Which may or may not be complete or fully comprehended. So with authenticity, you instead, I think, focus a lot more on what has been created and go, right, what's interesting about this? And scholars have done this with historical film. I think Mary Beard, the famous classicist, did this with 300. She picked up on lots of things that the film got right, even though it's been absolutely lambasted, and probably rightly so, for many of the things it got wrong. So I think if you focus on the authenticity side, you can sort of tease out what's interesting. And so, for example, just to throw a few out there, what I find quite fascinating about Rome Total War is that you do get a few things in it that are fresh and exciting if you don't take a view of, right, well, is this representation of this aspect right or wrong? So, for example, it's very right in the way that it takes this certain period of history and goes, what would have happened if? And the Roman historian Livy actually does write, what would have happened if Alexander the Great had survived and the Romans got to fight him? It's a brilliant passage in an otherwise massive history of the Roman Empire. And it's the ancient Romans themselves going, well, what if? And the game literally is predicated on what if. So you get a sense here that the game is playing with ideas of how we can think about history that have actually existed for a very, very long time. So it may get details wrong, but it certainly gets an interesting, authentic take on how ancient historians themselves have actually tried to understand the period in which they were living. And then, of course, on top of all of this, it's very interesting to study accuracy and authenticity from a player's perspective, right? You get a very different angle there than if you just look at the game alone. That's something that I've started to do with my own research. That if you start mining, the reviews and the forums for kind of player comments and perspectives, you really do pick up on how gamers themselves engage with these historical representations. Some of them do indeed look at it for sort of pernickety details, and that has often been the case with historical novels as well. You can write the whole thing in English, but if you get the name of a Roman spear wrong, my God, the audience will never let you forget it. So some people definitely love that kind of detail and really, really crave it, because for them that's authentic. But for others, authenticity is much more nebulous and harder to pin down, and is not about absolute accuracy, and is instead about kind of an evocative feeling of Rome, and that's where things like soundtracks come in, and other aspects that are much more subjective.
I really, really like that point about authenticity over accuracy, and I do think the authenticity is what made HBO's Rome absolutely brilliant. They did change historical details in order to fit the media of television, but it was always a show that felt like it was authentic to the world it was presenting. And I think that concept of historical authenticity somewhat feeds into the way I assess the topic of historical accuracy in the first part of this video, which really brings me to what was one of my main discussion points, really, that I think Rome Total War has a marvellous sense of humour. It plucks some of those little tidbits from the sources and uses that as a historical inspiration for the game. Things like the incendiary pigs are a great example, an oddity only vaguely mentioned by a few sources like Livy and Polyaenus, but units like the Arcani, the battlefield assassins, the mythical Amazonian chariots, or the Breton head hurlers, they're all a little bit ludicrous, but they're based in some sort of historical inspiration, and I think that's a great part of the charm of this game.
Absolutely. I think it mines the past of those interesting tidbits and then uses them for fun. And I think games are doing this more and more, and I've argued elsewhere that this is it's a new feature of gaming. It's what you can define as a mashup. So you just take loads of different bits of details, of receptions, of facts, of arguments, and you mash them together in the gameplay, and then say this is the ancient world. And in many ways that it is, and that's what's so fascinating about it. I mean, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think, is the example I use when I discuss this, because it sort of throws in references to Agamemnon and then to the death mask and stuff, and all that becomes part of the armor for a character. So you get these really interesting mashups, but you do see it in Rome Total War as well. And I think that does lend itself to a sort of wry humor. And you see that, I remember it as well, when in the traits that characters can get, you get some really interesting traits that are based on kind of at least ancient writings about sort of leaders and their caricatures. And you also get references in the ancillaries that characters get. I remember there was one about, why can't my horse be a senator, which is a wonderful reference to writings about the Emperor Caligula. So you do get these really interesting little nods to aspects of the past built into the gameplay, which tells you a lot about how it's possibly been put together, and also says, as I just mentioned, what it does with the ancient world then in terms of, sort of bringing things together. But also remember, the gameplay was fun not just for what they put in it, but what you could get out of it. So there's a playfulness sort of within the game as much as a playfulness with the game. So I used to find it really amusing to see what happens when the AI sets itself up for failure or attempts to do quite crazy things. At least when you sort of understand the rough history at play. Playing the game on Legendary can also be really entertaining, as well as sort of fighting against what happened historically or with what may have happened historically. You're trying to go against the grain there, as the game allows you to. That equally is, I think, quite a consciously inbuilt attempt to be quite satirical. Even it offers itself up to that kind of approach. There is a sense of humor at play here, and perhaps in many ways that does lend itself so well to this sort of legacy that Rome has had, because it doesn't rely on a very sort of serious take to the ancient world, or indeed kind of a very, very long and detailed script and voice acting like more sort of role-playing games do. It has that capacity to sort of step back and be a little bit more at ease with the material it's drawing on.
Let's consider Rome's impact on gaming, because I think the scale of Rome was like nothing in real-time strategy before it. We'd seen Command and Conquer and Age of Empires, but in Rome the campaign was detailed enough to pique the interest of grand strategy gamers, as well as those who'd only played the real-time strategy. It just saw the two genres brought together like never seen before. And this really reminds me of something that MELKOR mentioned to me when we discussed the legacy of Rome. So I'll play the clip for you now, see what you make of it.
It reminds people of a simpler time in their lives and in gaming. Just a fun game that you can play for simple enjoyment. But going back to it later in life, you realise there was actually more mechanics in there, more going on, and more stuff to do. You can be young and play it for its simplicity, but you can also learn and play it on a deeper level. Rome was one of those few games that is both a gem and a hidden gem, all in one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there's an important moment, I think, for what it demonstrated was possible to do. That kind of parachuting in and out is, again, something that we can actually trace back to how historians have written about history. There's this kind of the God's eye view, the sort of user's eye view that you get as you fly over a battlefield, as you go into the sort of fray, or as you come out to look at the thing happening at a distance. That is a conscious trope, and I think the gameplay itself enabled that, or was a sort of interesting way of mirroring that idea, where you could take this kind of overall view, this longue durée, they call it, viewpoint of history, this sort of long sense of how things transpire and change over time, as well as this very, very sort of intimate viewpoint of a single city or a single army or a single general and what was happening at that kind of level, in a sort of much more sort of small scale, more immediate setup. So I thought that was always what really interested me about the gameplay as well. If you compare that to role-playing games or to other games, there is nothing that quite gives you that balanced viewpoint of the sort of the real time and the grand strategy together. That really was the thing that sort of stood out to me looking back. And it's interesting that over time, it's only really been messed with. It hasn't been changed or revolutionized much. I mean, one of the latest games, Old World, a grand strategy game, it sort of messes a little bit with how sort of characters act in terms of a dynasty, and you play that, which is a slight sort of take on Total War and its character system, but it's only a subtle shift. What Rome offered was really rich at the time and remains so, and even the later installments only sort of innovated and messed around with the edges to offer a few additions without really sort of changing the core gameplay. I mean, yeah, that has also led in time fans to criticise the series for not innovating enough, perhaps further down the line. Since we have now got almost 20 years on from the release date, it is interesting that the latest instalments, Total War Saga Troy, really remains very close to that early base game.
Yeah, the strength of the base game in Rome Total War is probably why we see modding having such a big scene today, 17 years on from its release. Indeed, modding does provide such new life to any old game. Have you found yourself playing in the Rome mods, or are you more of an old school file tweaker in the spirit of this channel?
Well, actually, yeah, a little bit of both. I have done a little bit of file tweaking. I do remember the freedom that offered you when you were playing early games. I remember there's another, I think there's a Pirates of the Caribbean game where you could tweak the game files, and it was hilarious because you could rewrite the entire script. It was a lot of freedom was offered in a way that just absolutely isn't today. And I'm thinking here of Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed series, which is so locked down and so you can't play with it, you can't mod with it. I mean, there are some games obviously that challenge that. Skyrim is a good example, and when games offer their files up for modding, you can get entire separate games born out of that, as you absolutely did with Total War, with things like Europa Barbarian, which I haven't played, but I've looked into extensively, and that's a fascinating example of people going around going, oh, well, let's make this even more accurate, according to our view of accuracy towards the ancient world, and that's interesting in itself. It was very well received and very well reviewed, as I'm sure it's been mentioned before on this channel, and it's an interesting example of what can be done when gamers get their teeth into something and feel like they can change it for the better. And then I've also enjoyed other more sort of playful mods that come out. So I mean, Europa Barbarian is quite unique because it's history fans going, we want even more history in this, which I think Rome Total War did always give in quite large faithfuls anyway. But of course, definitely didn't go into as much detail as it could have done on the things that it wasn't focused in on. So the barbarian tribes, I say that in inverted commas, definitely were less fleshed out than they could have been, and so you can see why mods really picked in on that and did a lot of work there. But I've also always been engaged and entertained by what users can find to do with these things. So I think there's been multiple Lord of the Rings mods which are really engaging and entertaining and sort of show what's possible when you take a good base game and you bring in other multiversal stories that you can then sort of retell or engage with in a whole new way.
Yeah, as you say, sometimes modding takes on a whole life of its own. And interesting that you mentioned Skyrim there, because it has recently seen an old mod turn into a fully fledged game, the wonderful Forgotten City, which is set in the time period of Nero's Imperial Empire. It's just got this beautifully authentic feel to it, but as you say, it's come out of Skyrim. And aside from a couple small dungeons, it is essentially a whole new game. It's so left field, it's almost as if gaming's gone full circle and the mods are now inventing new games entirely out of these old games that they loved. And I think we see this in Rome Total War somewhat as well, especially with the old titles, Rome and Medieval 2. They still draw in new players decades later simply to play the mods. However, I would like to move on from modding for now, because I think for a channel like this one that has built so much of its viewership around modding in these games, to deserve just a little bit more focused attention. So I'm going to look at that in a little bit more detail in a separate video. Indeed, I did say that Legend of Total War would be making an appearance during this discussion, so his thoughts are going to be involved in the follow-up to this when I look at modding in more detail. But if I get back to you, Richard, because among your other talents, you are an accomplished musician, and Rome certainly had a striking score. During part 1 of this video, I absolutely eulogised over the score. Jeff Van Dyke, the composer, said that the score was heavily influenced by Hans Zimmer's work, particularly the aforementioned film Gladiator. And in the 20th century, much of the great classical music was written for plays and films, but with games like Rome, I think that set the scene for gaming to be where great works of music are now often found.
Absolutely. I think the genre of game music is only going to keep growing and is already gaining a lot more traction and interest from mainstream radio channels to sort of the full production that goes into it. There's a lot of money now set aside for this because there's a real conscious understanding, I think, in the industry that music is such a core part of immersion and presence in virtual worlds. And I absolutely agree that the Rome Total War soundtrack was striking and stunning and a special thing of its time. And I think it's so weird to think back now because we still have loading screens and other aspects of games that force you to basically sit and listen to the music. But in 2004, I remember spending a lot of time with early hardware, listening to the music during loading screens, listening to the opening soundtrack while deciding who to play as. Obviously, the amount of time spent on the campaign map, and indeed, running battles all the way through to their final time limit. You spend a lot of time listening to this music, as much time as you spent playing the game. So they're a lot more foundational and potential, have that potential for impact compared to even a film score, which you may obviously listen to outside of the film, but is going to be curtailed and limited in ways that a game soundtrack perhaps isn't. So writing good incidental music for a much longer, more drawn out experience is a real skill, and is something that we're seeing, as I said, being outsourced properly by developers. A more recent example that I've been interested in recently is the soundtrack for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which had multiple components, and for example, outsourced to a brilliant compositional duo who worked heavily on the main soundtrack and drew a lot of inspiration from the authentic musical instruments of the time to get a sort of different sound and feel to the pieces that they wrote and the soundtrack. But they also, for that game, they outsourced to a Greek choir to record the sea shanties that you hear while you're on the boat in that game, and you spend a lot of time sailing around, so you hear those sea shanties quite frequently. So there's a lot of interesting work going on to put together these very immersive soundtracks that both nod to the film world and the kind of soundscape that Zimmer in particular, created, and he in turn was drawing on preceding musical sort of spectacles like Mars and Jupiter, the Planets Suite by Holst for the sort of the power and the presence that those sort of pieces generated. So Zimmer's a big milestone, but games are in turn turning to that kind of soundscape, but they're also turning to other arenas to try and draw out moments that can be tied back to the history of the game. So the sea shanties for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example, and other games have similarly kind of drawn with authentic sounds and instruments, to try and tie that soundscape down to the world of the game. I know Rome Total War, to go back to our focus here, was also using Latin in its soundtrack, and I think that there is a lot of work going on here to marry those important aspects of the game together.
Yeah, it's the Latin aspect of Divinitas that I think you're referring to there, and the music using traditional instruments and indeed being sung in Latin definitely comes back to your point of authenticity over accuracy, which in many ways brings us back nicely full circle as I come to my final point. That recently Rome, of course, had a remaster come out, which has had somewhat mixed reviews upon release, and patches have seen the ratings improve, but a part of me worries that the legacy of Rome, a game very dear to my heart, of course, could be, well, tainted is a strong word, but influenced negatively perhaps by a badly received remaster. Indeed, if you look at Steam at the player numbers, the regular players for both games combined has already dropped below the figures Rome was posting before the remaster was announced. Do you think that the remaster has impacted the legacy of the original Rome Total War, or, to paraphrase the rather well-chosen words of Volound at the end of my previous video, is it a case that you can just forget about the remaster, but you'll never be able to forget the original?
It's a very good question. I've yet to personally play the remaster, though I've seen some videos and read some of the reviews. So everything that I'm about to say is definitely got to be taken with a pinch of salt here. But I think what's interesting is that this remaster has come out at a time when other developers are looking back to the same era in which their games came out and remastering them. So obviously the most prominent example here is Age of Empires, which recently brought out the definitive edition for Age of Empires 1. And I think there's a cultural moment here where, almost 20 years, or indeed just after 20 years for Age of Empires, these games came out. I think there's a particular reason why developers and indeed perhaps their audiences are looking back to these moments, because they were so foundational. And I think there's also a sense of nostalgia there. So I think with Rome, it was quite pared back compared to some of its successors. And some of the elements in its successors have worked so well, they've kept them. Others haven't worked so well, so they've jettisoned them. But Rome itself, you don't have that issue because it was the base game. So to a degree, a remaster is always going to challenge that sense of nostalgia and how people originally played the game. And I think the same has definitely been true of Age of Empires, where actually certain reviewers have said, well, the base game is better in a funny sort of way, because although you can get the benefits of updated graphics, of better user interfaces, of more integrated mechanics and paratext and everything else that was originally, part of hard copy manuals and hard copy technology trees and whatever, although that can all be in there, there's a sense that the base game remains special because it isn't fully updated for our modern world, because it has certain elements to it that actually still stand strong on their own, despite the fact that it can look a little dated now compared to some of the more hyper-realistic game. So I think there's a nostalgia at play there, both in the audiences, but also in the developers. I also think it's a very savvy business ploy, and perhaps ties into some of the criticisms that have arisen around innovation. It is much easier for a developer to go back and just redo a game they've already done, that they know has been very successful, that is still very well received, than it is to create something brand new. That's not to say that Creative Assembly aren't continuing to focus and develop new material, because they absolutely are. But I think there's it's an easy one for them to do, but I think there's a particular reason that it's happening now, and that's not just the nostalgia I just touched on, but also the speed of technological change. So in that time, so much has changed in the world of gaming and in the world of tech, that there is almost no comparison now between what's possible and what was possible. And that sense that games were originally these things that you bought in massive boxes that were contained on multiple CDs that you had to play on your own. There was no internet or very limited internet connectivity, and they were just a very different experience. And I think that 20 years on, you're getting this sense that developers are trying to acknowledge that change and that speed of change, and update things for what is now a very different world, in terms of hardware, in terms of audience, in terms of abilities. So I think there's a lot of reasons at play for this to have come out when it's done, or when it has done. Whether that then is successful on its own terms, or whether it indeed sends people back to the original game, is interesting. And I think that gaming in that sense is just starting to enter into the world that film has been living in for a long while now, which is where you get the classic films that come out. They make a massive impact on cultural awareness and understanding of what the medium can do. And then down the line, film just basically unearths itself. It does an archaeology of itself to tell new stories. I mean, we've seen that even very recently with films like Mank come out, retelling of the way that Citizen Kane came to be, the film Citizen Kane. So you've now got films about films, and that kind of meta level is starting to happen in the game world. It's happened very quickly because so much has changed so quickly. But I think looking at how games are being made about games now, it is interesting that to see what kind of reception that will have, and whether indeed it will shape how developers look forward, whether they continue to sort of unearth their back catalogue, or try and make sort of the same kind of grand leaps forward that they were doing back when these titles originally came out.
There is a beautiful irony about creating a remaster for a game that was in part so excellently received because it was notably ambitious and innovative in its design, although, as you say, theoretically at least, it is a very savvy business ploy and very much part of the modern gaming industry. Remasters, though, are certainly an interesting phenomena, and they are, to my mind, a bit of a double-edged sword at best, certainly something that deserves its own analysis. Perhaps for another day, though. But before you go, Richard, I do want to give you a chance to plug some of your projects you're currently involved in. I mentioned them at the start, but I'd just like you to have the opportunity to let people know where they can find out more, should they be interested.
If people are interested in kind of my take on some of these things and the work I'm doing, then the University of Bristol's research portal is the best way to access the different areas that I'm working on at the moment. It's definitely ongoing work, and I'm hoping to continue this work in the foreseeable future. As I think it's definitely a rich and growing field. My main interest at the moment is in trying to sort of catalogue user responses to these games over the period of time since they came out, to try and understand their impact in a much more sort of quantified way than has been possible until sort of now, when these games have become much more permissible to study, dare I say it. But yeah, so absolutely, my University of Bristol research portal is the best place to check out my publications. I've recently got an open access article on Rome Total War itself on time loops and how save games facilitate time loops, which people might be interested in. And I'm also working on a project, I'm a research associate on a project where we're developing a virtual reality oracle, where we're rebuilding a virtual world where users will be able to go and ask the ancient Greek oracle of Dodona questions. So it's a really exciting project, an ongoing project, and that should be launched sometime next year. So that's a watch this space. It's been an interesting project to get to grips with, from the angle of a researcher. So we're feeding through historical information, but we're also creating something that is very much, a virtual approximation. So it's very interesting to see that process at work and to work with a games developer to bring that to fruition. So as I said, watch this space for that. And yeah, thank you for having me here.
I must say that your Oracle project does sound absolutely fascinating, and I should mention to our audience that reading your article on gaming and time loops is actually what led me to inviting you to this discussion. So do go back and look those up if you are interested in further ideas and commentary mentioned in today's discussion. In fact, I will be linking them in the description below for your convenience. So thank you very much for joining me today, Richard.
Thank you, Tom. It's been brilliant.
As well as Dr. Richard Cole, of course, we've had some insightful contributions from Prince of Macedon, Volound and MELKOR, so big thank you for them for helping me with this project and discussion. As I mentioned, I am looking to analyse the continuing legacy of Rome through the modding scene, and Legend of Total War has already spoken to me about this, so you can look forward to at least him in that next video in the not too distant future. But I think for now it is time to leave you. Thank you for joining me for this video. It has certainly been a very different style of production for me, but it was enjoyable to make, so perhaps we'll see more of these in the future. Do comment down below for any of your thoughts on today's discussion, and I will catch you next time. I'm Thomas, this is To Nerds to Human, and this has been The Legacy of Rome Total War. It's better than you think. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Go, my pappies, go! Hunt down the German dogs.
My chariots are complete lunatics. Stop charging into the spears. Stop charging into the spears. Why do these guys not break? Everyone else has fled. Go home. Go home. What is happening at the chariots?